Hello, welcome to the University of Cincinnati's College of Engineering and Applied Science Graduate Studies Alumni Chat. It's a long title. We're still working on a new title, but there you go. This is what we're doing. Our audience are potential students so that they can hear from an alumni about what their life was like as a student. Our current students who are making some serious decisions about their careers, hopefully they can learn something in this conversation. And we really want to celebrate our alumni. So my name's Amanda McLaughlin. I'm the Director of Career Development for the Graduate Studies students here in the College of Engineering and Applied Science. That's Master of Engineering, Master of Science, and PhD. And I'll hand the conversation over to Sid.
Hey folks, hope you're all doing great. This afternoon or evening, or depending on when you're listening to it, hope you're all doing great as well. This afternoon we have a 2014 graduate from the College of Engineering, Muhammad Ayub Ansari, a friend of mine from way back when we were graduate students on campus. He graduated with a master's in environmental engineering. It's been a while, and I'm really looking forward to talking to him. So, without further ado, Muhammad, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Sid. Thanks, you and Amanda, for having me here.
Pleasure's ours. How's life been? It's been quite a while since we've spoken to each other. Hope you've been doing as always, pretty well.
Yeah, I've been doing great, professional, personally. I actually had a son 7 months ago,
Oh,
so
congratulations.
thank you. So that's been a new milestone in my life. So kind of just adjusting to that. But
Sweet.
yeah, everything is going great.
Hopefully a future Bearcat. Crossing my
Hopefully,
fingers.
yes.
We'll see.
Yes.
But no, as I said, the pleasure's ours to have you on the chat. Really looking forward to the kind of learning that you had as a student on campus, and the kind of things that you have to share with our listeners or viewers, depending on where you're consuming this content. Um, the kind of stuff that you have to say to them all. But I guess we'll just jump right into it. So you and I were graduate students on campus around the same time, and like myself and a whole lot of other folks on campus, you were also an international student. Um, where are you from, and what's the one thing that one should know about your hometown?
So that's a very interesting question because I was born in India,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of makes it interesting, but I never lived there. I
Mm-hmm.
spent most of my life growing up in Dubai,
Mm-hmm.
and then I moved to Canada, when I was still in high school.
Hmm.
So, I could tell you great things about each of my cities, but, I'm from Toronto, and, we love our ice hockey, and we love our Tim Hortons. So
Sweet.
that's something to know about us.
Tim Hortons. Great.
Yeah.
We have one on campus. I don't know if there was one when you were on campus. I guess it's more of a recent thing. I guess you
Yes.
would have liked to have one.
No, I would have wished for that.
Yep.
One more reason why I would have joined UC if they had Tim Hortons, right?
Or one more reason why you should make a trip back to UC. Hey,
Absolutely.
homecoming day is not too far away, just a few months
Right.
away. But okay, so you've been all over the place, but you relate to Toronto the most. Why did you pick UC, and why did you choose to go to CEAS?
So I think one of the main reasons was proximity. I have to be completely frank. Ohio is pretty close to the Canadian border, and that would always play on my mind because I think at least a lot of us Canadians that come to UC or any university and to do in US, our initial goals are to complete masters and go back to our country, in this case, Canada. So that was one of the reasons. UC had that great environmental engineering program. Uh, and I always wanted to do environmental engineering, not the MSc, which regarded more on thesis, but more of something that had a combination of a capstone and a potential internship position. And I think in that sense, MEng kind of stood apart compared to a lot of the other offers I had on table.
Mhm.
And then I obviously came to the campus and I just fell in love with, apart from the architecture, just the whole city and the vibe, just meeting the professors and, meeting some of my potential classmates. And I just decided to kind of go with it and haven't regretted that decision.
Sweet. Love to hear that. So you started at UC for your master's. Where was your undergrad done, and what was that in?
So I did my undergrad from a place called Seneca College. It was located in Toronto. It was actually Seneca College and York University. It was a dual program.
Oh,
And
okay.
I did my undergrad in environmental engineering, specialized in environmental remediation. So that was just a typical four-year engineer program. And I always knew I wanted to do a master's just to give me that academic inflation on my resume that I would require to get some of these roles that I was interested in.
Hmm.
So after I did my undergrad, I think I took a year off just doing internship at different firms in Canada, and at the same time preparing for GRE. And once I got my offer, then I came to Cincinnati.
Came to Cincinnati. Sweet. What was that transition like from life in Canada, life in Toronto, to life in Cincinnati? Probably not very different, or probably very different from what a generic international transition would be for folks from India, like myself, having transitioned from life back then to life here. But I'm sure it would have been very unique for you, even though Canada and the US share a lot of similarities.
No, I think you're right, Sid. Like I can't say that I had the same challenges that anyone who comes from, as they say, across the ocean, from India or Pakistan or Bangladesh and those kind of areas, or any part that is not North America. But it is interesting on its own because when I was doing undergrad, I was obviously living with my family. I had a network of friends and I had a strong base that I could always rely upon. So coming to Cincinnati, all the way from finding the first residence where you would be living in to just navigating yourself, to attend the classes, it was unique in that own sense. I don't think culturally Cincinnati is any different from Toronto, but I think you put on different goggles when you're a young kid where you barely know anyone. And so there were some, I'm not going to say issues, but more of like, interesting challenges, I think, which helps any international student grow.
Right, sweet. Great, love that answer. So that was you from life before Cincinnati, before UC. Then you eventually, for all the reasons that you mentioned, decide to move to Cincinnati, go to UC.
Right.
Curious to know a little bit more about your life at UC, and I guess Amanda, take it away.
Yeah, happy to. So I'm curious if there were any student organizations that you were involved with, or did you find your own creative way to engage, meet people as a newcomer to the city?
So I was obviously a part of the grad society. I think, Sid was very involved in advertising that. So, I appreciate that because I think one of the things that I think any international student kid faces is, okay, which organization can I be part of? And I kind of made a promise to myself that I would purposely not join organizations that I was already a part of back in Canada because I wanted to experience
Oh.
something new. So I think
Mhm.
that kind of had an initial setback because I wasn't sure where to approach it. But there were there's sports organization that I was part of. There were a few environmental organizations, and I also participated in a few inter-university tournaments when it came to just engineering design and environmental presentations. So it was just a combination of a few different things.
Okay, cool. Okay, so there were a lot of people who you were engaged with on campus, like professors, faculty, staff, classmates, and we want to celebrate them all, right?
Right.
But were there one or two who had a particularly good influence on your experience that you might even be in contact with now?
Yes, I think the first impression of the how good this program was given by Eugene Rutz. I'm not sure if he's still around.
He is. Yep.
Right, he was very honest with what the program is, what kind of
Uh-huh.
expectations there were. So it's good because I've noticed there are a lot of universities that shall not be named who promise pretty high things just to get that student there, and
Hmm.
then he's left on his own or she's left on his own. And I think Eugene
Hmm.
was very honest about the expectations, and I appreciate that for it. Drew McAvoy was a professor
Mm.
that I kind of had a few classes with. He was great. Um, there was one other professor who I'm actually in touch with LinkedIn, but I can't remember from the top of my head.
It's
He
okay.
was, I'm sure we can edit this. He was the little Greek guy. I think that
The little Greek guy.
he's a bit,
I can picture him,
yes,
but
yes.
I don't remember his name.
I'm sure it'll come up by the end of this conversation.
Okay.
But
All right.
again, he was, he also, I had a few classes under him. And just overall, these were interesting professors not because of how good they were in their own subjects,
Mhm.
but they kind of gave a more practical view of how to
Mhm.
get ahead post academic life, in terms of, hey, getting good grades is just one aspect of how you, use your time in University of Cincinnati. You have to attend seminars, or you have to go and do X, Y, and Z. And,
Mhm.
they were just a great example overall.
Yeah, I was just talking with a friend of mine who works at Accenture, and he was telling me like the huge number of students they hire every year, and he said emotional intelligence is huge in the job search process. And
Absolutely.
Eugene Rutz he really focuses on emotional intelligence in the way he works with his colleagues, including me,
Sure.
but also the way he coaches students. So yeah, I agree. I hear you on the Eugene Rutz part.
Yep. And I completely agree with you, Amanda. And I think academic intelligence can only take you so far.
Mm.
And it's very hard to prove your academic intelligence, I think, especially in North America, because your GPA does not really make a difference when you're standing in front of a panel of people who are interviewing you.
Hmm.
But we can talk more about it when we come to that section.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So, who is your employer and what's your current role?
So I've been with Parsons Corporation since 2017. So
Mhm.
it's been almost 5 years. I started as what do you call a lowly field engineer, and I'm currently a project manager for Con Edison in Brooklyn, New York. So that's been my trajectory.
Okay. So, what do you enjoy about your work?
So I think for most of my career, I've been almost the field guy. I'd go out,
Mhm.
conduct my experiments, do the field work, supervise contractors in terms of, doing pilot test studies or collecting data. But I think I've finally come to a role where I'm the one managing engineers and kind of keeping an eye on the budget and the schedule.
Mhm.
And, it's a very natural progression, and it kind of helps me kind of coach some of those young interns who are still in their master's program or
Mhm.
undergrad program. So I think it's a combination of just, imparting the wisdom that someone else gave it to me, and just taking a bit of a back step and kind of seeing the overall picture versus just being a field engineer and just focusing on one part.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you said you've been at Parsons since 2017, right?
Yes.
Um, so it's been a few years, but what do you remember about the application and the interview process? Any little memories stick out to you?
Sure. So it's interesting because before Parsons, I worked for a firm called Trinity Consultants.
Mm.
Um, you know, um, and they came to our infamous job fairs that happen in UC.
Hmm.
And I think what generally happened was, uh, one of those kind of old mottos that it kind of helps to know someone. And I think someone I had a class with at UC who was my senior had actually already graduated and worked at Trinity. So she was able to give me a bit of feedback in terms of the kind of the position and requirement. And I was able to use that information to kind of present myself to the applicable person at the job fair. And
Okay.
obviously, I was able to get my foot into the door. And, surprisingly, I actually used UC services and did a lot of mock interviews to kind of prepare myself, which I highly recommend people doing that because it's one of those amazing things that is freely available at our university. And everyone thinks they're confident in an interview, and then suddenly they get those butterfly feelings. So I kind of use that resources a lot. I think I've been there multiple times. So for Trinity, I was able to kind of get that interview like that and just pass through the technical rounds and get my first job. And with Parsons, it was actually a bit kind of similar in the sense when I was at UC, I realized that applying to jobs through their websites is not an effective use of time. I think I don't think that was true in 2014, and I think it's definitely not true in 2021. I think it's frustrating because, as Sid can potentially tell as well, you're just kind of filling the same information, and then you have this nagging feeling that your resume is probably not even going to be read by a human person. It might be rejected by this anti-tracking software, something similar. So I think I realized early on that it was a waste of my time. What I did instead, and which I would recommend to people who are trying to look for jobs in master's and undergrad position, is that I used LinkedIn to kind of target jobs that I wanted, and I was able to kind of identify the location of a position and then reach out to that company's potential hiring managers and kind of send 100-word email indicating, hey, this is me, this is what I can bring to the table. I'd love to have 5 minutes of your time to have a chat about it. Fair warning, I think I sent 400 to 500 of these, and I got responded by maybe 20 of them, and 5 of them were willing to have a phone call with me. And one of them potentially turned out to be a very senior manager at Parsons. So when I wanted to shift from Trinity to a different firm years later, I'd kept in touch, and he was able to give me an opportunity to interview for a role, and I've been here since then.
I have so many thoughts running through my mind in response to things you're saying. One, I love the fact that you mentioned that it's often who you know, but the person you knew was somebody that you met while you were in the MEng program. It's not like you came to campus with that network of people. And so that's just an example and an encouragement to our potential and current students. One, a challenge to engage with your classmates, meet people, learn about them, help them learn about you, and they are part of your network. Two, mock interviews. Our graduate students can schedule mock interviews with me. We can do in-person mock interviews now. We can do phone mock interviews, and we can do video mock interviews. All of them require a slightly different approach in like the conversation style. And I'm trying to think, there was a third point you just made, and maybe it'll come back to me, but the emails that you sent. So I also share those kind of high numbers with our students as they're in the heat of applying for internships and jobs. And I say, I'm not sharing you these high numbers with you to discourage you. I'm normalizing this for you because you're not alone. Especially our international students, they have to work this hard to find those golden jobs, the ones that are because we don't want you to settle. And it sounds like you didn't settle at Parsons.
No. I mean, I would recommend one thing, Amanda, just adding on to what you're saying.
Sure.
Is that when you're reaching out through LinkedIn or building a network, if you're in a 2-year program, for example, I would recommend do it in your first year. Because what happens is you do not have the sense of desperation, which makes you commit a lot more mistakes because you have this urgency, you have your OPT and CPT, and you're not, you can't put the situation far enough away from you to kind of look at something objectively. So that's why I started pretty early, and the
Good.
rejections didn't bother me because I would kind of hype myself saying, oh, I still have a year and a half left. I have a year left. I have 10 months left, and I could just build that myself up to that. And yes, it's extremely high. The rejection, I'm not going to say rejection, the non-responsive rate is pretty high. And it's not, and I was telling someone, it's not personal. It's not because they looked at your profile and they don't like you or something like that. It's just maybe they're busy, or maybe they're not sure how to respond, or, you know, they don't have openings and they don't want to waste your time. And, you know, the worst thing that can happen is they don't respond to you, and it's not going to be a big deal. I mean, it's not like you're supposed to be their best friends. It's just a way to kind of build your network.
Yeah.
And I guess starting early also gives you the luxury of time, if I will, to build that relationship. I guess if you're too close to getting done with your graduate studies and then you reach out, you know that you have to get to the point and just ask, hey dude, are you hiring me? Can you please give me a job?
Right.
Especially with international students, as you know, the clock's ticking the moment you get that degree. Versus starting early, when you know you can take time to build that relationship, and eventually if something opens up, people will reach out to you and say, hey, you know what, this person XYZ has been in touch with me and I have this potential position that could open up, might as well send it their way, because you never know.
No, I agree, Sid, you're right. I mean, I'm sure a hiring manager on an average gets hundreds of messages in a month from different international students, potentially saying the same story. So, you know, how do you stand yourself apart? And, you know, if there's one lesson we can impart in the year 2021 is like, how do you make yourself stand apart? Because there's a lot of people in the same role trying for the same position.
Yep. And I think if you do start ahead of time, the way you explained, you can take the time to actually ask meaningful questions and develop that relationship and not be in a rush for them to hire you. So yeah, that's wonderful advice. So you were hired by Trinity Consulting first, right? So when you got the offer from them, who was the first person you called to tell them?
I think I first called my parents. I was like, oh, look at me. I think that's, you know, that's because obviously they had invested in me so that I could do a master's. And I don't think there would be anyone in the world who would be, I don't think for any students, there would be anyone in the world who would be more happy about a news like that than your parents. At least I hope so. So I think it was my mom first, and my dad, and my, you know, brother and sister. And, you know, then it was my roommates, you know, so they were all happy. So it was great.
Okay, I love it. So what was one more memory question, and I'm going to hand the conversation over to Sid. But when you were relocating for your work at Trinity Consulting, and onboarding, what was that process like? Any fun things, any challenging things?
So yes, so I think initially I wasn't sure where my location would be at Trinity, because I think it was between like Chicago or Ann Arbor, Michigan, because they have both offices. So I think it was a bit of like, oh, you know, Ann Arbor, Michigan, it's very close to where my parents live, like an hour. So that mindset would be very different. And then Chicago would be completely different. So, you know, there was a bit of nostalgia. I kind of took some time to walk through UC because, you know, as much as you want to come back to UC, as, you know, as Sid was saying, for graduation week, you really don't know where your kind of life leads you professionally. You might never be in the Midwest again. I frankly never thought I would be in New Jersey, New York area, but here I am. So I think it was one of those, you know, kind of enjoying these moments, kind of, you know, packing everything, and you know, it was just interesting. And onboarding, onboarding for me, I think at Trinity was pretty similar to coming and onboarding here at UC, because now you have to find a new place again. You have to build a lot of things from scratch. But you know, it's a bit of a different kind of pressure. I think when you're starting a master's program, you have the pressure of making sure you're doing well academically. And then I think especially for international students, even before you step your first, before you even have your first step in, you already have the pressure of when am I going to get a job? How quickly is that going to come? So I think I didn't have that kind of pressure when I went with my first job at Trinity, and you know, it was just a great experience. And then coming here to Parsons, again, coming all the way to New Jersey, New York was you know, interesting in its own way. But at that point, I was kind of more experienced in these moves, and it wasn't that much of an impact.
No problem.
Yeah.
Oh man, thanks for sharing. I'm going to hand the conversation over to Sid now.
All right, sounds good.
Sweet. Are you? Thanks for sharing all that. I loved pretty much everything that you had to say. The one thing that I do want to kind of highlight, and I guess it kind of sort of has been my motto over the past 7 years at UC, and even before that, more so at UC, is what you said about it's not about what you know, not only about what you know, but who you know, or who you know, depending on what version of the quote you've heard. And after having moved to UC, I heard two other versions of that quote. I think one of them went something on the lines of, or maybe it was from a book, a Shark Tank book, that said, it's not about what you know, it's not about who you know, it's about who they know. And I'm like, that's deep, because you have to be able to know people who can eventually, you know, open you up to a whole new network of folks that you didn't really have the access to. And then fast forward, I want to say about 6 years, I heard a different version of that quote, which went on the lines of, it's not about what you know, it's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. Kind of flip that last part on the person, and kind of put spotlight on how much are you out there, and how many eyes are on you, how much do you stand out in your words, so that people can notice and say, hey, you know what, I have this position, I have this opportunity, whatever it may be, and I think that person that I'm looking at would fit right in. So I'm like, okay, that's two interesting ways of putting a quote together in a way that I didn't think of it before. But that kept aside, getting back to your responses, thanks for sharing all that. That was pretty insightful. I have a few set of questions, I suppose, that would require you to put your student hat back on for a little bit, if you will. And as you mentioned, you were born in India, you grew up in the Middle East, and then you lived for a long time in Canada. Given all those experiences, what sort of suggestions, tips, what sort of advice would you have for international students at UC, either current or prospective?
So I think the first advice I would have is that, and I can only talk about, you know, students from India because I can more relate to them. But I think India and the Southeast Asia is pretty similar in that sense. I personally think there's a huge cultural gap on what the expectation is in terms of what you need to do to succeed in Asia versus what it is in North America. I think, you know, Sid, you'd be potentially aware of this. You know, from a very early childhood, you're potentially told, hey, you put your head down and work hard and people will notice you. And I have to say, that does not work in North America. If you put your head down and work hard, no one is going to notice you. You'll potentially be doing the same thing. You'll maybe get a promotion every 4 or 5 years, and you know, you'll retire in that firm. But someone who's a bit of a loud mouth, who can back it up with the work he's doing, he's going to succeed. And I keep telling a lot of these people who I kind of coach, in the sense who work in my company, is that I understand there's a certain reluctance when it comes to international students when they have a job, is that, oh, I cannot negotiate my salary. What would my boss think? Or, oh, what, you know, I'm kind of restricted by my visa purposes or immigration purposes. And while I understand that concern, I feel like if someone doesn't reach out and tells their boss or their company management they're unhappy, or they can do much better job, they're going to potentially be in that role for years on end. I know people who are technically brilliant in their field, but they cannot advertise their skills, and therefore they're stuck in that rut. And I would tell all this to international students is that academic brilliance can only take you so far. You really need to build up your network. You're in a different country, in a different culture. If you're going to be spending your entire day in the library doing the same thing you were doing from where you came, and not grow yourself personally or professionally, then you might as well have done your master's back in India. I mean, there's an advantage of coming to North America, and you have to use that advantage. And I don't necessarily mean going after class to ask your professor 1,000 questions. That's one way of doing that. But I kind of made sure, and I know a lot of people who made sure that I participated in student politics where I could. I took part in this. There was an inter-case Duke University competition sponsored by Duke Energy. Just to get my name out there. I didn't expect to win or anything, but it was about, if I can know 3 more people who know me by my first name, that in itself is networking. So I would tell any international student, make sure you build your network. Don't get disappointed by any potential rejections, because you're going to get a lot of them before you get the right sweet spot.
True. No, very well said. I think I can relate to that a whole lot, and I'm pretty sure people on campus, people who've been there and done that on campus, will also relate to that. Switching gears about your time spent at UC a little bit.
Yeah.
As a student, what was the most fun place that you traveled to? I guess counting or not including back home, because I'm assuming, might have had a chance, or not, depending on how hectic your grad life was. You
Right.
might have had a chance to drive back home, or maybe not. But outside of home, because it was close by, what's the most fun place that you traveled to as a student?
I mean, again, UC is such a beautiful campus in itself. Like, I've been to other places around UC with my friends, obviously, seeing basketball games and football games. But like, I could spend my entire 2 years in UC, and I think I would still find like an obscure room where something like, I remember it was, I think in 2014, where I was just kind of walking in a different section, and then I came across like a Harry Potter role-playing room, and I was just like, oh, this is amazing. And I think this is the thing with UC, that I think I spent a lot of my time in the Starbucks with my friends, or just in the stadium, watching football practice, doing my homework. I think it's just the ambience of that place, and it was great. It was just it has a very special place in my memory.
Oh, I bet.
That is one unique thing about our campus, is that students have access to the football stadium all the time.
Yep.
Like, you can go and sit and hang out, and you can run the track. Of course there's practice going on, but
Right.
I've always enjoyed having that access. Anyway, okay, keep going, guys.
Oh, no problem.
And we had our, I think we had the DAP building, which in itself is pretty unique.
Oh, yeah.
To have these exhibitions. So I would make a mission to take as many engineering students I could just to visit DAP, just to see the creative side, because I personally thought that, I think sometimes we engineers kind of forget the creative aspect of something. And, I think DAP just kind of, it almost like has a concentration of all this amazing creativity from all of our top students. So it was always pretty unique to kind of just sit there and see what people were doing.
Yep, no, I agree. DAP is one of the places that I used to go to often,
Right.
to familiarize myself with the building, because initially I found it pretty confusing to kind of navigate around and then see what pathway led to where. And then I learned from a DAP friend of mine that they, or at least her friend group, had a system very, very much like the system in Harry Potter, wherein different sections of DAP, different disciplines in DAP, associated themselves with different houses in Harry Potter. One was Gryffindor all the way to Hufflepuff, and they're like, oh, I belong to this house. And and she belongs to this house, and we
Right.
totally hate each other in a competitive sense. I'm like, oh, okay, that's fascinating. So that was one of the places that you could go to get lost and be fascinated in itself. But I guess my next question would be, when on campus, when as a student, were you the happiest?
Ooh, that's a very interesting question, because I think there are a lot of, I'll tell you this, I don't think there was any moment that I was sad.
Okay.
I mean, apart from graduations, because it's an end of era.
True.
Because after that, I never wanted to do PhD. I personally thought, respect for people who could do it, but to me, it was masters and just move on to work career. There, a lot of instances, I think, just you make lifelong friends there, and you it could be like getting your first internship, getting your first job offer, or just attending like a grad event and just enjoying the company of people, and you're like, oh, this is perfect, because obviously I think anyone comes into UC as an international student, and you're a bit of concern about whether you make friends or not. I know it's pretty dramatic in that sense. I think people generally do make friends, but I had this thing where, but like, where do I fit in? Because I think calling myself pure Indian is not really true, but calling myself Canadian is also a bit of exaggeration. So eventually you kind of study and do your tests together and your courses together, or you just hang out and enjoy Bearcats potentially winning a game most of the time, I would think, and you kind of form friendships and then kind of go from there. So a lot of happy memories.
Sweet. I guess it's safe to say that pretty much all the moments, all the time that you spent on campus were happy moments. So,
Right,
so yeah,
right.
we'll take that. We'll take that absolutely.
Yes.
You also mentioned that the choice of your involvement was very selective, because you wanted to try out new things, potentially very different from the things that you were involved back during your undergraduate days. Given that, were there events that you went to that you really had fun at, events that you got to kind of dress up and go and be like, ooh, this is so much fun? So if you had to pick one of those things, does anything jump off the top of your head?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things I joined was, there was like a very small, obscure rock climbing club that was at UC, and that was something I would always look forward to. And I think we had quite a few just musical concerts about classical music, and that was a unique thing to me. And Sid, if you remember, we had a lot of grad events where we would go to different parts of Cincinnati and kind of enjoy that. And I met a lot of people there that I'm still in touch with. So quite a few formal events. We stayed in, I think it was in Indiana, representing UC in a competition again. And that was a great thing. We had like a like a social event. You meet different universities, and kind of build your network there as well. So just a lot of these red tie events and a lot of just informal events, but overall, like, everyone had a good vibe, and I think that was very important.
Sweet. And shout out to CCM for all those concerts. Thank you,
Yeah.
CCM. What if you had to pick a moment to say, hey, I was really proud of myself at this given point at UC during my time at UC as a graduate student? Does that bring up some memories? Or to kind of summarize that question would be, what's the one thing that you're most proud of from your time as a student at UC?
I really think about it, Sid. It's I think, to me, pride is like two different things. I think there's one sort of pride when you feel kind of good about your own accomplishments, which I think is the very easy sort of pride, which I think everyone can have. I think now, as I'm at a stage of my career where I feel like I'm more proud of myself if I can help someone who's still at UC, or graduating from UC, if I can have a call with them and just kind of calm them down and, tell them, hey, you're not alone on this boat. It's completely normal to be hysterical about something because we were all in the same place. Because I think one of the things, and I hope a lot of people from UC, not in UC, anywhere in America who graduates, especially international students, I think we have a responsibility to people who follow us, who are following our footsteps. To be completely frank, while I had a good source of network that kind of helped me, get me potential positions and kind of guide me, and that might be unique to my own industry. I've heard some other industries are a lot more cutthroat. They're not as helpful as they should be. And I think that's a bit unfair because eventually, I like to think we're all Bearcats, and we have to help the people who are following us because we are pretty much in their shoes a few years ago, and the hope is that these people follow us and make a great impact, and then they can help the groups before us. I know a lot of my friends, who are extremely stressed out and who didn't get the right guidance in their specific fields, and unfortunately they had to go back to India, which is not a bad thing in its own. I mean, they're in great careers of their own right now, so good for them. But I feel like if that kind of talent would have been guided a bit more, I think UC would have, not UC, just North America in general would have been greatly benefited from what they could bring to the table.
Sweet, I love it. I love that you mentioned, hey, let's we're all Bearcats, and let's think of it that way. Sweet. I guess that pretty much brings me to the end of my set of questions. I know that we've thrown certain specific questions your way, but
sure.
Is there anything else that you think you would like to share based on your experiences at UC, or things that for sure? Hey, you know what? I think this is something that the current students or prospective students should know about, not just life at UC, but in terms of grad life in general, regardless of where you're going to be.
Sure. So firstly, I think the name of the professor is Dion. It hit me. His name is Dion Dionsis. So shout out to him. So the only thing I would have anyone who looks at this video take from it is that being a master's student in itself is difficult. Being an international student adds a level of complexity. Coming from a country which makes green card almost impossible just adds another layer of complexity to it. So there's a lot of stress that's associated with it. There's going to be a lot of questions. There are going to be a lot of sleepless nights. I would say, again, reiterate that you are how there's that you're your net worth. I think you're your network. You have to build that network pretty strong. You have these 2 years. You have to throw yourself out there for any competition, in relation to your field or not. You don't know where these opportunities would come in. I sat in a PNG graphic design class for designing Tide Pods, and it has nothing to do with my field. But where else in your life would you get that opportunity to, sit in something and not have anything to lose? So I'm going to tell this to a lot of my engineering, future peers, is that build your network. Don't think applying for 15 jobs a day. Firstly, it's not healthy. I don't think it's healthy at all. Applying in an online network and getting constant rejection, puts you in a cycle of this depression where you're like, oh, where am I going to get my next job? Because everything seems hopeless. I've had people who would almost compete about how many jobs they applied a day, which again is not a healthy concept to be in. I would think is you have to do a bit of smart. You got to use LinkedIn. I think we're very advantageous on how LinkedIn has become in these years. Reach out to the right people. And I understand that the immigration process has become a lot more difficult than what it was in 2014. But there's still valuable companies, including Parsons. So reach out to me if you're looking for a position in Parsons that hires international students. And one of the things that you can do to stand yourself apart is your network can only bring you to an interview. After that, you're on your own.
It's on. Yep, it's on you.
Is that, don't be just your job. We want to hire someone that's an all-round character. Develop leadership qualities, because I think a lot of people would love to just follow orders, and we have a lot of those, and they also have a place in society. But if you want to kind of make a really big impact, you have to learn how to be independent. It's completely fine asking questions, but you need to have the confidence in your ability to take a stand professionally when you're working on a project. And I think that's one of those big, Amanda was saying, people, we're looking for people with emotional intelligence. We're looking for people, who have the experience and the ability to know what they're doing and do not need to be micromanaged at all times. Especially in remote working environments, there's no one to keep an eye on you or look across your shoulder. So, I'm not saying everyone is born with that talent. I personally was not, but you have all the abilities and amenities in UC to kind of develop that character, whether it's as simple as, developing leadership by playing cricket in an inter-cricket tournament at UC, or, taking a stand and presenting a poster for your class.
Or just going out to get that coffee at a grad cafe event, because you get to meet cool folks like Ayub and get to talk about.
There you go. That's
all
where I
sorts of
developed all
things.
my ability.
Yep.
That was that one coffee event.
Yep.
But don't, I guess what I mean is don't be in your shell. I understand if you're an introvert person, but if you need that job you're looking for, you need to be an extrovert in the sense where not a bragging loudmouth, but someone who knows what they can bring to the company or an organization, and kind of go from there. And one final thing on a different note is that we live in a very political tribalism time where people are being divided in groups, based on their political identity or religion. So, what we need is people who can stand in the middle and kind of bring these groups together. So I understand everyone has a bias, but irrespective of people's political stance, if you're once a Bearcat, you're a Bearcat, and you got to help the Bearcat irrespective of what they represent. So that's all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Love it, Ayub. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you, guys.
I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. We did have a little alphabet soup when we were talking about CCM and DAP. So just for our listeners who have not been on campus or maybe have not explored campus enough yet, CCM is the College Conservatory of Music. And there are opportunities to go see plays, musicals, go to concerts. It's really lovely. And DAP is DAAP, that's Design, Architecture, Art, and Planning. And they're both on the main campus. They're both really great colleges to explore. I think you are a person who can bloom where they are planted. Does that make sense to you, Ayub?
Well, thank you, Amanda. That's kind words.
I'm inspired by your story. I hear ideas of curiosity, exploration, being genuine, and taking risks. And I just really appreciate what you shared with us today. And Sid, it was a really great time talking with you too. I'm really glad
Absolutely.
I get to do this with you.
No, I totally agree with everything you just mentioned, Amanda.
Yeah.
Ayub, once again, it was a pleasure listening to everything that you had to say. I am pretty sure that folks are going to listen to it again, both current and prospective students, and going to be like, oh, okay, I kind of have an idea of what I'm getting into, and I cannot thank Ayub enough for sharing that, because hey, it's good to listen to the folks that have been there and done that, so that I know what I'm getting into. So once again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing all that. Amanda, any closing thoughts outside of that?
No, I'm going to put the contact information in the show notes. And until next time, thanks again, Ayub.
All right. Thank you for having me. Take care.
Bye.